Before I jump into anything, I want this explicitly known. This list isn't here to determine how good or bad a game is, so if a game you like is on this list, it doesn't mean it's bad, just very different from the main series of games of which it originated from. Although with that in mind, not everything on this list is a gem either, as you'll soon find out. I don't know what possessed the game developers to make these games, but they exist, and we'll soon be informed of the strangest video game spin-offs of all time. Mario, considered the flagship mascot of Nintendo, is not exactly known for being selective in the games he's in. He's been in spin-off after spin-off. From tennis to golf, he's appeared in over 200 games, and arguably many stand out as odd. I could make this entire top 10 list on his games alone, but I'll choose one particular game that stands out to me. Dance Dance Revolution Mario Mix, a Mario game based on the titular Dance Dance Revolution. This Nintendo GameCube game opens with Waluigi stealing 4 music keys, who can grant wishes, from Truffle Towers. However, when he tries to open the door to the room containing the music keys, 3 of them scatter across the Mushroom Kingdom, and the 4th one is kept by Waluigi. From a distance, Toad watches these events unfold and rushes to tell Mario or Luigi, depending on which character the player chose, who then rushes off to retrieve the missing keys. The keys are recovered by completing tasks for other characters who have found the scattered keys, and then defeating them in a dance challenge. These characters are, in order, Waluigi, Pirate Lakitu, Blooper, Hammer Bros, Wario, and Freezy. Toad and the player's character then return the music keys to Truffle Towers. Soon after, Bowser steals the keys, but is followed by Toad and the main player's chosen character. They then enter Bowser's castle to recapture the music keys, and are promptly challenged by Bowser. After defeating him in a dance-off, Toad and the player's character return the music keys to Truffle Towers for the final time as the game's ending sequence plays. The game plays as you'd expect a Dance Dance game to play. However, instead of obscure Euro dance beats and Cotton Eye Joe, you have to rhythmically keep up with various tracks from previous Nintendo games, such as Here We Go from Super Mario Bros., Step by Step from Super Mario World, and Hammer Dance from Super Mario Bros. 3. The game received mediocre reviews at best, and gently faded away into Mario obscurity, along with probably hundreds of other titles. Do you want to know a common exclamation in my group of friends? I wish there was a Pokemon game for console. This usually has to be clarified that he means something akin to the main series Pokemon games. Because let me tell you something, there have been Pokemon console games. Sure, we've had the weird ones like Hey You Pikachu or Pokemon Snap, which although quite well received, you can't deny how strange it is. Here's what I think is the weirdest one to my knowledge: Pokemon Channel. For a start, the game is hard to pit into just one genre. It has adventure elements, simulation elements, and digital pet elements, and this isn't even including the non-game elements within. The game centers on watching television programs with a Pikachu. The player can surf channels freely among the various channels of a television network created by Professor Oak, as well as explore one room of the house and several outdoor areas. The game takes place over a few days, with unique plot events on each. The GameCube's inner clock tracks time such that every in-game day lasts at least as long as one real-time day. Several channels are available, however only a few are essential to completing the game. Oak Report plays episodes of an anime called Pichu Bros, and listens to plot-advancing news coverage from a Psyduck at Pokemon News Flash. On a channel called Shop and Squirtle, the player uses the in-game currency, Poke, to purchase bus passes to travel among the game's locations, as well as non-essential items like Pokemon dolls, new television sets in various styles, and other decorations, all delivered by a Delibird. The game has a collection mechanic in which you collect Pokemon cards of various quality. The collectibles can be found by having Pikachu speak with other Pokemon, and help them with tasks, or by ordering from the shop in Squirtle. There is a virtual Pokemon mini console hidden under the player's bed that plays 6 games, Snorlax Lunchtime, an exclusive of this game, and 5 other previously released games for the Pokemon Mini. The games are simple and mainly based on rhythm. You can see why this game is so hard to pin down in just one genre. It's a mixing pot of different ideas that mesh surprisingly well. The game was criticised for how short and repetitive it was. However, if you can get this on the cheap for a kid that loves Pokemon, I'm sure they'll get their use out of it. The original Syndicate was an isometric sci-fi game. Much akin to other real-time strategy shooters of its time, you took control of 1 to 4 person teams of cyborg agents. The game is looked back on fondly by fans. However, Bullfrog Productions, the company that made it, under the reign of EA, closed down. The IP was picked up, however, for a modern reboot spin-off of the same name, Syndicate. Rather than a tactical game, the new direction slapped it into the already at the time overpopulated market of first-person shooters. This shooter, set in 2069, assumes control of Miles Kilo, an augmented agent working for Eurocorp in a corrupted, deceitful world in which corporations compete with each other for power. Yeah, as you can tell, this game not only turned into an FPS, but also went down the gritty route. Miles has a Dart 6 chip that grants him hacking and breaching abilities. Some enemies also have this type of chip, and Miles can interact with them. The player can use the breaching abilities to hack into enemies' minds and control their actions. They have access to 3 options: Backfire, that causes enemies' weapons to malfunction and backfire, stunning them; Suicide, that causes enemies to kill themselves; and Persuade, that leads enemies to defect to the player's side before committing suicide. As a game, Syndicate received positive reviews, however the story wasn't so well done. It was criticised for being predictable or simply boring. Also, the change from its original, loved genre to a generic FPS didn't sit well with fans. Overall, this game entered the gaming scene rather quietly and simply faded away that way. There is a saving grace, however. Like a lot of popular Kickstarters, some of the original staff banded together to fund their own spiritual successor to the original games. Their goal of £350,000 was hit, totaling at £461,333. But as we've seen on last week's list of failed Kickstarter video games, we'll just have to wait and see how this turns out. Yoshi started off as a bit of a spin-off to the main Mario franchise. However, as soon as this cute green dinosaur starred in his own game, his popularity shot up, and soon he became a named franchise of his own. To name a few, there's Yoshi's Story, Yoshi's New Island, and most recently, Yoshi's Woolly World. There was one spin-off that stands out from the rest, a spin-off called Yoshi's Safari. In this game, Mario and Yoshi have to save King Fret and his son Prince Pine of Jewelry Land from Bowser and his Koopalings. Unlike most Mario games, it is a rail shooter with support for the Super Scope light gun. The game is played from the perspective of Mario riding on Yoshi's back. Yoshi's head is always visible, and accidentally shooting at him causes a loss of health and he turns to give the player a dirty look. The Super Scope can be fired automatically, which quickly drains power. The RPM of the Super Scope would decrease when its power meter was close to empty. When completely empty, it will continue firing, but only one shot at a time if the fire button is held down, signifying that the player needs to release the fire button and let it recharge. Yoshi's Safari puts emphasis on platforming, and at times, it is imperative to jump in order to avoid some obstacles. Also, there are branching paths that lead to different enemies, mini-bosses, or prizes, though they always end in the same main road, which leads to the boss. The bosses can be Koopalings, with some of them piloting mechs, bigger versions of normal enemies, such as Big Magikoopa or the Big Boo, or Bowser himself, wearing a suit of armor, equipped with 2 handguns and a devastating energy cannon located in the stomach. The game is rather well received, and is one of the few notable games that's compatible with a Super Scope light gun. Does anyone remember the Guitar Hero vs Rock Band standoff that saw the gaming stores filled with cheap, second-hand plastic guitars? What started off as a good idea turned into a competition to one-up each other, which resulted in the market being saturated pretty fast. We saw Guitar Hero Aerosmith, then the Beatles Rock Band, then Guitar Hero Metallica, then Green Day Rock Band. These were just the spin-offs, along with the numbered main titles, and even then, the numbers started getting so high that they simply dropped that convention to just giving them subtitles, like Guitar Hero Warriors of Rock. Guitar Hero then tried mixing things up with DJ Hero, a peripheral-based rhythm game in which you used a button turntable instead of a guitar. Well, these are mostly weird on their own, but one stands out enough to be put on this list. Harmonix and MTV Games ended up partnering with TT Fusion and Traveller's Tales, along with Warner Bros. Interactive Entertainment, to make a different spin-off. With so many developers and production companies together, what genius idea did they conceive? LEGO Rock Band. See, I understand the conception of cashing in on a popular rock band for a rock game to garner fans' interest, but LEGO and rock? The only instance I can see these going hand in hand together is how painful they both are to stand on barefooted. It basically played like other rock bands did, but with LEGO themes. Completing a consecutive series of notes will build up the player's score multiplier and add to the band's total LEGO studs, the equivalent to points for the song, etc. Despite my apprehension to the idea, it garnered warm reviews, averaging about 75% of the score system of which it was judged. I guess I'm not in the demographic to appreciate the idea, because it seems it was praised for being simplified for the whole family to enjoy, which sounds nice to me. It was even nominated for the Best Family Game Award from the Academy of Interactive Arts and Scientists, but lost to the Beatles Rock Band. I know I'm going to upset people with this one. It's sad to keep bringing up this franchise after many have accepted its fate. I'm talking about Silent Hill. The series as a whole is known for its survival horror influence, being one of the main go-to series for scares in mainstream gaming. Konami haven't been kind to the series over time though, and it looks like it's died a quiet death. However, during its lifetime, there is one notable game that stands out as different. A game called Silent Hill Book of Memories. Rather than a main console survivor game, this is a hack and slash for the PS Vita. You can choose from 5 classes that seem to be based off horror movie cliches. You can either be a bookworm, goth, jock, preppy, or rocker, and each can be customized to a degree. The goal of each zone is to collect the required amount of puzzle pieces to solve the area's puzzle, and then proceed to the next zone. Each zone contains a save point and a shop, where the character may purchase items with memory residue, the in-game currency. At the beginning of each zone, another character, Valtiel, offers the player character an optional side quest. Certain rooms called Forsaken Rooms contain a ghost. The player's action towards it results in a positive, negative, or neutral outcome, which, in turn, affects the ending of the game. For combat, the player character can find a variety of melee and ranged weapons, ammunition, and items to restore lost health. Melee weapons take damage and eventually break from being used, although items to repair the damage can be found. The game features an alignment system, blood, steel, and light. Collecting the karma left behind by defeated enemies shifts the character alignment towards either the light or blood end of the karma meter, depending on the monster. Each alignment features different abilities and affects the ending of the game. The creatures present in Book of Memories have appeared in previous Silent Hill games such as Silent Hill 2's Pyramid Head and the ghosts from Silent Hill 4 The Room. I can see the Silent Hill influence in this game, However, I can see why people have criticised its questionable presence in the franchise. It looks like Sony were after PS Vita games that would sell, and decided to slap Silent Hill on a game and call it a day. Although with Konami's reputation, I'm sure it wasn't hard to get them to say yes. The Uncharted series set the PS3 apart from its then rival, the Xbox 360. This exclusive was a grand tale of a treasure hunter who gets in too deep too fast. It's akin to playing an action movie, reminiscent of the old Indiana Joneses. The series had 3 main releases on the PS3, all of which were praised. So what did they decide to do? Well, make a spin-off, of course. A developer studio by the name SCE Bend Studio, previously Eidetic, before being bought out by Sony, yes, the company that made Bubsy 3D, created a spin-off Uncharted game for the PS Vita. Uncharted Fight for Fortune is a strategic turn-based card game released on December 4th, 2012. The game pits 2 players against each other, represented by characters from the series. The players use their decks of cards to defeat the opposing side. Cards in the main game come from Uncharted Drake's Fortune, Uncharted Golden Abyss, and the video series Uncharted Eye of Indra. 2 expansion packs were later made to add cards from Uncharted 2 Among Thieves and Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception. This game received a mix of reviews from its fans, noting it as being a simplified Magic the Gathering. I guess that would make it okay for someone new to get into trading card games, but too basic for veteran card game fans to try. Does anyone remember those Command & Conquer games? I loved those games when I was younger. Command & Conquer is an established strategy game series which were a staple in the genre. Each game often mixed things up and had a tradition of cheesy F&V cutscenes with the corniest of acting. I'm sure at the time they were panned for it, but looking back, it's part of what gave the series its charm. However, not all Command & Conquer games were a strategy game. One game in the franchise stands out as a bizarre spin-off. I'm talking about Command & Conquer Renegade. Instead of commanding an entire army, you are a lone soldier on foot fighting the final days of the Tiberian War. That's right, this hit the FPS spin-off of a popular strategy game trend before this was a thing. The only difference between this and the Syndicate FPS spin-off or the XCOM FPS spin-off is that this game actually did quite well. It wasn't revolutionary, but it managed to snag a few awards and reach some decent scores from reviewers. Street Fighter games are hard to get wrong. The game genre is pretty much in the name. This arcade classic turned competitive esport game is a 1v1 fighting game in which perfect inputs, combos, and fast reactions mixed with a spot of luck will win you the game. The franchise has jumped around a bit, especially in Third Strike when they tried mixing up the roster of characters to a successful degree. And there are some noteworthy spin-offs, such as Puzzle Fighter, a puzzle game in which you connect blocks to make your chibi Street Fighter character attack your opponent rather than fighting yourself. However, one such spin-off stands out as one of the most strangest spin-offs of all time. I'm talking about Street Fighter 2010, The Final Fight. This game was made when 2010 was the far future, and that's why the setting is so futuristic. How wrong they were. The player takes control of Ken, a cyborg cop. The objective of each stage is to destroy the designated enemy target shown before the stage begins, and obtain the energy required to open a trans-dimensional portal to the next stage. Like most side-scrolling action games, the player uses one button to attack and the other to jump. Ken can also climb walls or pole-like structures, as well as hanging onto and climb, or drop down, certain kinds of ledges. Ken's main weapon is an energy projectile which he launches with his fists. Ken can shoot straight at either direction horizontally, as well as upward vertically. Believe it or not, it's not just the gameplay that's radically different, but the plot is just downright bizarre. In 2010, Technology has advanced to the point that any person can easily travel from one planet to another through the use of interplanetary warp gates. Ken has retired from his fighting career after winning the Street Fighter circuit 25 years before, and has since become a gifted scientist, developing a new substance called cyboplasm that grants superhuman strength to any living organism that it is administered to. Ken's lab partner is killed, leading Ken to bring the killer to justice by implanting his body with bionics, as well as an interdimensional transporter in order to follow the killer's trail, who has left traces of cyboplasm in each of the planets of the frontier which the killer has visited. If this sounds weird to you, it should. This is nothing akin to how any of the Street Fighter story goes. A misconception is that this game wasn't originally a Street Fighter game, and Capcom USA slapped it on to make it sell. However, this is wrong. It's called Street Fighter in both the US and Japan. One difference, however, is the addition of Ken. That was Capcom USA's addition. The original protagonist was originally called Kevin. Still, that doesn't excuse how strange the spin-off is. Due to the radical difference, plus the shoddy controls, this game received mixed ratings. Chances are, if you go to any arcade or kids entertainment franchise which houses arcade cabinets, you'll find one of the House of the Dead games. These are arcade staples, and each one usually features varied peripherals for each game, such as a shotgun, an Uzi, or standard pistols. The gameplay is standard throughout, challenging rail shooter with alternating paths, often encouraged to be played with 2 people. Deviation from this formula is rare, however spin-offs do exist, selling on the renowned name ingrained in people's minds from childhood. Now you're probably expecting me to talk about the infamous Typing of the Dead spin-off, a more educational version of the game in which you learn to type by matching words on screen, with a successful attempt killing a zombie. However, there's one even stranger. English of the Dead. Heard of it? Probably not. It's another educational spin-off designed to help Japanese speakers learn English. This, exclusive to the DS, has you killing off zombies by translating Japanese words to English, similar to how you type zombies to death in Typing of the Dead. As zombies approach, panels with Japanese text appears over them. It's up to you to write the English translation by using the stylus. Get the translation correct, and the zombie will die off, shouting out the English phrase that you just entered. Anyway, if you enjoyed this week's list, leave a like, and if you want to see more of these in the future, subscribe. I put out these lists every Saturday. And if you want to see more lists now, click here for my top 5 biggest video game Kickstarter fails, or here for my top 10 frightening Easter eggs in gaming.